Hey there, it's Jennifer. Two of my favorite things in card making is to take one product and use it many ways, and another favorite thing in card making is background stamps. So today I'm taking one background stamp and showing you three different ways to use it. Now I used a new stamp from Basic Gray in Hero Arts, and I did it for three different backgrounds here, or three different looks, but you could do a lot of these techniques with pretty much any background stamp that you may have. Now, Hero Arts recently came out with some new stamps, and I'll have a discount code on my blog for the next that's good for the next week or so be sure to check that out. Now, I used one of my new favorite background stamps, but I thought I'd also do a giveaway on my blog of a few of my other favorite new stamps. So these are all new from Hero Arts and Basic Gray. Those cling background stamps are all from Hero Arts and Basic Gray. Hero Arts makes their stamps, and the stamp set in the middle is from Hero Arts. So I'm going to be giving all of these stamps away on my blog, so be sure to check it out. I'm going to use that one stamp today, but I like these others. I think this background here on the left would be great for any style of cards. You could go vintage with this, you could go preppy with this, anything you want. And then this other stamp here, I think there's a lot you could do with this kind of graphic background. You could stamp it once this way and then turn it and stamp it this way for a double stamping look. But I'll be playing with those on my blog in the next few weeks. But today I'm going to focus on the petal background that you see there. Now I've grabbed 4 pieces of cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. These are just 4 beautiful colors. And I'm going to stamp and white heat emboss this background stamp on all 4 pieces of these cardstock. So I ink up my stamp with Versamark ink. And then I press really well to make sure that I'm transferring all that ink onto that cardstock. I find cling stamps are easier to use this way than putting them on a large acrylic mount. This way you can make sure that you get all the ink transferred. And then I'm going to shake on my Hero Arts white embossing powder. This is my favorite white because it's nice and bright. And I'm going to heat set this. And I love how detailed this background stamp is. It's just beautiful. Now I'm going to do this exact same thing on all 4 of the pieces of cardstock that I showed you. And by the way, I will link to those colors of cardstocks below in the YouTube description and on my blog. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this. Now people have asked about what kind of cardstock I use, that it's pre-cut this way. I just cut it myself, and I cut the cardstock into 4 pieces, right down the center and then right down the center again. So now that I have all 4 of those pieces done, I want to do a greeting in the middle that's pretty simple. So I have my Ranger Liquid Platinum Embossing Powder. People have asked about this container, so I thought I'd show you. I figured out something new. I didn't like having my spoon just kind of thrown in the embossing powder, so I got one of these cable hooks and stuck it on the inside of the cover, and it holds my spoon, and I love this. These cable hooks are inexpensive. You get a bunch in a pack. So I've done this with my favorite embossing powders because I use them so much. It's just a little trick. You could use a container that you already have. These little spoons, I'll show you where I got them. I have a link below also, but you could also get them from like an ice cream shop after you try a sample of a flavor. Somebody recommended that in my YouTube comments in the past. So I'm just shaking this powder on. I like this liquid platinum because it's kind of a warm silver color. I'm going to heat set this. This is just on regular white cardstock. And then I'm using my 1.5 inch circle punch to punch these out. If you don't have a circle punch, you could just trace the circle on, or you can use a die to do this. I just found that the punch was quick and easy to do. And I'm going to use that same sentiment, punch sentiment, on all 3 of these cards. So let's go ahead and start with this card and assembling it. Now I'm taking those 4 pieces, I'm going to cut different areas out and kind of piece it all back together in the end. So I started in the center here, and I'm cutting out this kind of a leaf, four leafed pattern out of the center. The reason I cut out of the center of the card instead of from the side is I don't know if I'm going to want to use any more of this background. I don't want to have to emboss it again. Now I'm just going to kind of take layers out. You can pick anything from the pattern to cut out, and I'm just going to layer this all up in the end. So if you have a different type of background stamp, you can just look for a pattern. Maybe it's stripes, or maybe it's circles, anything you want to kind of cut out and layer on top of each other. So I just wanted to check and make sure my sentiment sat nicely in the center of this. And now I'm just going to continue to do this with all the other colors of cardstock, and then I'll end up repeating some of the colors. But I'm just looking for a pattern that I can kind of follow and trace along. Now you could have also stamped this with tone-on-tone inks so that you get like a subtle look, but I really like that white embossing powder on this detailed pattern on these bright colors of cardstock. So once I have all the layers cut out, I'm just going to put on some foam tape here and assemble them all together. You'll see some of these areas are cut out, but that doesn't matter because we're going to layer them up so you won't see that. Just putting lots of foam tape on here because I want these to stay together well. Now I put foam tape in between each of these layers, so this is going to be a thicker card that I would put in the mail with like a bubble wrap mailer, which I use all the time. But you could glue these flat on top of each other if you wanted to avoid that thickness. But I really love the look of all that dimension here. I think it's just beautiful and worth that little bit of extra postage. You can see all that's built up there. Just think it's beautiful. Now I decided to kind of trim off the edges so you could see my white note card sticking out the side once I put this onto it. Now since I have so many layers of cardstock here, I wanted to make sure that I used a really strong adhesive. So I've got this new one that I'm trying from Tombow. It's called Tombow Extreme, and this is like the strongest of tape runner adhesives. I find I really like it because it's going to hold on tight. So I'm going to use this in cases where I have a lot to glue down. The trick to it is you put the tape down and you pull it to the side to kind of break off the adhesive. And this stuff is nice and strong. So it holds tight onto this note card that I cut. And by the way, this is heavyweight 110 Neenah cardstock, which I like to use for cardstock or for card bases. So there we have that card. That's the first option, all layered up. Now this one only has that one layer of background, but I use lots of color. It's really kind of bright, but I think it's still kind of fun. And this is really easy to do. It looks like it took a long time, but it really didn't. So I'm inking up that same stamp, and I'm going to white heat emboss it again, but this time I'm doing it on watercolor paper. My favorite watercolor paper is the Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper. It's just really strong, has nice texture, but you can use any type of watercolor paper. So I'm white heat embossing this so you barely see it in there. But now what I'm going to do is start coloring in parts of this. Now look, I am not taking much effort to stay in the lines. I'm not taking much time at all. I'm using distress markers because these kind of act like a watercolor when they come in contact with water. You can use any kind of watercolor marker for this technique if you have any type of watercolor marker. I just really like the distress markers. Now I'm not really caring much about that center because I'm going to cover it up. And whenever I get a little bit of ink built up on the white embossing, I just wipe it off with a wipe. But that white embossing will resist it, making it really easy to stay inside the lines. So I'm doing kind of a rainbow of color going out from the inside. But again, I'm not taking much time. I did all 3 of these cards in about an hour, so I didn't really spend much time coloring here. Probably, I would say 20 minutes. But it's worth it in the end because this is all we're really doing on the card. So there you can see my quick and fast coloring that I did here. I didn't even stay in the lines in the end here because I got tired of doing it. But it works in the end because what we're going to do is take water and mist it. I misted it maybe 8 or 9 times from about a foot above. Just enough so the water moves a little bit and blends. And then because I'm impatient, I'm heat setting it. You could leave it to dry if you wanted to. And then I'm buffing off any color that might have rested on top of the white embossing. And here's a closer look at the results. I didn't stay in the lines at all, but look at how that water helped to blend it and take care of the fact that I did it very quickly. I love this kind of watercolor look. The reason I use distress markers is they kind of react with water and act like a watercolor, but you could use any type of watercolor you might already have, like watercolor crayons, watercolor pens, or watercolor pencils. But I think this is a quick and easy way to really make a background stamp shine. Just fill in the empty areas with watercolor. Now the third idea is super simple. There's nothing crazy here. It didn't take me long at all, but you could do this in a variety of colors. I just embossed the background, but I used a really fun embossing powder for this. So again, I'm going to ink up that background stamp with Versamark ink and stamp it onto some mint colored cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. Now this time, instead of using white embossing powder, I'm using the Ranger Verdigris embossing powder. This is just beautiful. It's like a mix of teals and golds and coppers. So you get kind of like a patina look when you're done. I guess that's the right word. But you get a mix of colors. Now on this detailed of a stamp, you don't see a lot of that variation. On some stamps that have more solid area, you would see it more, but you can see it there when you tilt it in the light. And I just think it adds some fun texture. Again, I used that same greeting piece on the center, but then I added some pearls just for a little bit of interest coming out from the center. I could see doing a set of note cards in different colors like this one. So this is 3 ways you can use a background stamp. You can use it simply with embossing powder, or here, like I did with adding some watercolor, just lots of color, or the first idea that I showed you where I layered up different parts of it. So I encourage you to take your background stamps and see what you can do with them. If you're interested in any of these products, they're linked below in my YouTube description. Or you can head to my blog at jennifermcguireinc.com, where I'll have much more information along with that giveaway and the shopping discount. Thanks so much once again for stopping by.